What is going on, Internet? My name is Lou, and I make Linux videos. So today we're going to be taking a look at Ubuntu 14.04 Trusty Tahr long-term support release. This, of course, is a daily image. The final release isn't slated until April, and so we're going to be taking a look at this desktop and covering various topics. First and foremost, as you can see, this is by no means the default installation. I've customized this and done a lot of tweaks to it to make it my own. And if you're looking for a vanilla overview, and by that I mean someone with a fresh install who hasn't changed anything, this may not be for you. I've customized this because you guys are going to customize it. You're going to install it and you're going to make it your own. And I want to show you what's possible in terms of a desktop. So for those that are wondering, the GTK theme here that I'm using is Numix. The icon theme I'm using is Numix. And the wallpaper I'm using is actually Numix as well. So that's that. Some of the things that we're going to be talking about here. Of course, the new features. Of course, I'm going to be sharing with you some things in terms of what to expect out of this particular release. If you're a new Ubuntu user, I'm going to talk about some reasons why you may want to install this. And if you're an existing Ubuntu user using a previous version, I'm going to talk about some reasons why you may want to upgrade. So let's get to it. First and foremost, if you see me looking down, it's because I'm looking at my trusty Nexus 7 here for some notes. I haven't used Ubuntu since 11.04, and I think that's fairly significant because I haven't really given, if you've noticed on my channel, too many reviews to Ubuntu, and that's just because, not that I don't think that Ubuntu doesn't have any good qualities, because I've used a lot of Ubuntu derivatives such as Mint or Elementary OS, but for me the Unity shell has always just not agreed with me. And I felt in the early days that it had a long way to go before it was going to be productive for me. Now, I think a good point to make is this. I think in terms of the Linux community, the cool thing to do is to bash on Ubuntu. The cool thing to do is to say that Ubuntu is terrible, and if you say that Ubuntu is any good, you're a quote-unquote noob. This type of thing doesn't exist really. This kind of mindset doesn't really exist in the other software realms that are out there. Like, you don't see Windows users calling another Windows user a noob because they only use Home Premium instead of the the Ultimate Edition, or you don't see OS 10 users making fun of each other for using older versions of OS 10. This really only occurs in the Linux ecosystem, and I find that it's extremely interesting. But you got to remember, love Ubuntu or hate Ubuntu, it's really hard to put a percentage on this because there's really no way to track it, but I'm willing to bet that a vast majority of people using Linux today wouldn't be using Linux unless they started on something like Ubuntu. And for those of us that love Linux and are enthusiasts, you really need to take that into consideration. So love Ubuntu or hate Ubuntu, they've helped transition people onto the platform, and that's noteworthy. Also, they're one of the only distributions out there right now really trying to get out in the consumer space with other contenders like Windows and like Apple. And so I think that that's another noteworthy point. They're taking their passion and they're taking their vision and they're trying to get it out to the masses. So that's not necessarily a bad thing either. So even though it's the cool thing to hate Ubuntu, I'm going to try to present this overview as unbiased as I possibly can. And remember, I am not a Unity user. I haven't used it since its very first iteration in 11.04. So my thoughts and opinions here are going to come from someone who has been disappointed with Unity in the past. And spoiler alert, I've actually, dare say, almost enjoyed using Unity over the last week that I've had this installed. So let's get into the review. First and foremost, this is of course an LTS release, which means it's going to be supported for 5 years. So end of life on this is going to be April of 2019. For all of you Ubuntu 13.10 users, this is a great reason for you to upgrade because in July of 2014, your Ubuntu 13.10 installation, and again, if you're using a derivative of Ubuntu. Now, that derivative may support it longer, and most don't, by the way, but that derivative may support it longer. But if you're on a standard installation of Ubuntu 13.10, you will no longer get updates or security updates or any updates to the desktop itself after July of 2014. LTS releases, for those that are not familiar, are generally not releases that the team introduces bleeding edge features, which means the experience that you're going to get on the LTS releases, and even those who, again, have not always fell on the fan side of Ubuntu would have to agree, the LTS releases are generally pretty solid. Again, I've run derivatives of Ubuntu that were based on 12.04, and they were really solid. So this particular desktop I don't think is any different. Even though this is a daily image, it's been rock solid for me. I've had one system lockup, and I think that that was actually due to OpenShot, not to Ubuntu itself. We are going to only see Unity 7 in this particular iteration of Ubuntu. They did not release Unity 8. Unity 8 goes hand in hand with Mir, which brings me to my next point. Mir is not going to be the display server of choice here for Ubuntu 14.04. It's just not ready yet. They're still working on a lot with this whole convergence project that they're trying to do, which is basically take the Ubuntu desktop and make it available on a mobile platform, make it available on a tablet, and of course on your desktop. And they want to do a lot with the touch as well. Now, again, this is a pain point for Ubuntu because they get knocked on this convergence idea all the time. And newsflash to anyone who doesn't think outside of the Linux box very often, if you look at software in general, Apple is doing the same thing with iOS. They're trying to take iOS and make it available on all their platforms, which of course is going to be on their iPads, their iPods, their iPhones, and their iMacs. All right, so and of course their MacBooks. They're trying to take iOS and make it a unified experience on all of their different hardware platforms. Also, Windows is doing the same thing. Anyone who's used Windows 8 and then used it on a tablet, it's the same interface. Everyone's trying to do this convergence because they're able to take, for the most part, one software stack and be able to, and it's really smart. They can take a software stack and then take all their development and really focus it in one path instead of 500 different paths. Instead of having to focus on mobile and then having to focus on tablet and then having to focus on desktop, they can do a lot of the same development and then deploy it in all these different form factors. So, and it's because these different form factors are what we use in our day-to-day. I mean, perfect example, I'm reading my notes here off of a Nexus 7. I could be reading my notes off of a Nexus 7 running Ubuntu Touch. So, you know, I think that the convergence idea is a cool idea because, and again, I have to give credit because I think, you know, Apple's probably done the best job with this. They've given a very unified experience. A lot of their products have historically always gone together very well. So if you had an iMac and an iPod and an iMac and an iPhone, and all their different products have generally gone together very well, and the software is very similar. But I digress. So you're going to get Unity 7. However, you can install Unity 8, and I can show you how to do that very, very quickly. I'll bring you guys in here a little closer. So you can see with a simple search, Unity 8 shell is available in the repos, and it would be a simple sudo apt-get install Unity 8 to get the Unity 8 shell installed. So that's pretty simple. It is in the repos, but again, this is a preview, and it's not ready for prime time yet. So if you install it, do it at your own risk. Actually, you know what? While we're here in the terminal, I'm going to show you guys what kernel we're running. Currently, this is 3.13.0-12. Of course, I'm sure this is going to be revved and updated by the time the final release comes out. So that's the current kernel that we're using right now. So it's got a nice latest and greatest kernel. I mentioned Mir is not being used here. Xorg is still the default display server. So no Mir just yet. We've got some, of course, all updated software packages and libraries. And you know what we'll do? So the Software Center is still pretty much the same old Software Center. Let's do Software Updater. So not too much has changed with the Software Center. If we come into, you know what, the Software Updater, here we go. The Software Updater has been revised. So it's going to give you a little bit more information. It's going to display a little bit more information now that it used to. And the UI is slightly different. So we're checking for updates right now. While that's loading, there's also been updated Gnome packages. So all the Gnome packages are being updated. Well, the ones that the team wants to update, because they do have a lot of custom versions. For instance, the file manager is a spin-off of Nautilus, but they're updating the Gnome packages to 3.10. Here's the new software updater. So the software updater is going to include a lot more information now. So you see these little arrows, you click down on the arrow, you can you know, check out a lot of what's being updated. You know, here we have a update to my NVIDIA driver actually. So I'll install these updates after. But that's the new software updater. There's a new search now. So when you hit the Windows key and W, you bring up a list of windows. In fact, you know what I'll do? I'll open up, whoop, hit my hot corner there. I'll open up Firefox as well. So open up Firefox. We hit Windows key and W. Now if you start typing something like fire, it's going to bring Firefox to the forefront. If we do something like soft for Software Center, as you can see, it brings the Software Center to the forefront. GU for GUVC view, it brings that to the forefront. So that is a new feature now. When you do that scale, it's a compiz effect, the scale effect, you can actually start to narrow down which window you're searching for by starting to type it. It works pretty well. Sometimes it works kind of funky. If, for instance, you've got to type in, it's not always the name of the application. You may have to type in, like if you're using a web browser, part of the search that you're doing, and that'll actually bring up the web browser. It'll bring it to the forefront. So that's a new feature there. Improved Android support. Now, I don't know if this is necessarily something because of what the Canonical team has done, or it's just the 3.13 kernel, but I've got a few different Android devices. I have a Nexus 7 tablet, a Motorola X Developer Edition, and a Samsung Galaxy S4. I can plug any one of these into my PC here, and the file manager will open up and let me browse that that device by default, which was not the case in Ubuntu 13.10. So improved Android support gets 2 big thumbs up for me because I'm a big Android user. So I really like that. One of the next features I like to talk about is huge in terms of usability for me. And we're going to open up the settings here, and we're going to go into Appearance, and then we're going to go to Behavior. And as you can see, Application menu, you can now select it in the top bar, which would now put it up here, the global menu, or in the window title bar, which is going to include it here in the individual window itself. For me, little feature, but dramatic impact on my workflow. And I'm going to show you guys a couple of examples. If I've got OpenShot open here, excuse the pun, and I'm working in OpenShot, right? Let me change my setting back to the way it was before in the top bar. And so I've got that open. We're going to have my terminal down here. If I wanted to access the menu in my terminal, but I'm working in OpenShot, and as you can see, now I'm OpenShot is the window in focus, so the window menu is up here in the global menu at the top of the screen. If I wanted to access the menu for the terminal, I've got to bring the terminal window into focus, which means bringing my mouse from this corner, whoops, down to this corner of the screen, bringing terminal in focus, now swinging my mouse all the way back to the top of the screen. It's a lot of going back and forth. I have a 27-inch monitor, so that's a large distance I'm having to span my mouse. Now, you could say, well, you could always use Alt-Tab, bring the window into focus, and then skip to the top of the screen, and that's pretty quick. And you would be right, that is quicker than that, but I'm not a huge Alt-Tab user. I don't use that feature quite a bit. So for me, I'm dragging my mouse back from one corner to the next a lot, and it's just not productive for me. So I'm really glad to see that feature implemented. And it's weird because I was an OS 10 user prior to using Ubuntu, and I never had a problem with the global menu. But for whatever reason, in Ubuntu's implementation of it, it's just a pain point for me. So I love this feature of being able to put the menu back here in the title bars. Just makes it a lot more productive for me. Let's see. We've got some new icons that are also being introduced here. Of course, I'm not using the standard icons. I don't know if those have actually been completely released yet because they looked kind of the same to me. But we're supposed to be getting some new icons, and they're supposed to be actually integrating some of the web apps into the desktop as well. So that's going to give us a preview of this whole convergence idea of being able to use the web apps on our desktop and so on. So that's some of the things to look out for here in Ubuntu 14.04. So if you're looking for some cutting edge features, or if you're looking for some bleeding edge development ideas that Canonical's been working on, they're not going to be included in this release. If you're looking for something that's going to be pretty rock solid stable, I think that the Unity has come a long way. I think that it's pretty quick. I've tweaked it the way that I like it. It's very usable. And again, stay tuned for my Life with Unity series, because I'm going to be talking a lot more about the Unity interface itself and some of the things I like about it, some things I wish were a little bit different about it. But in terms of this particular desktop, I would recommend upgrading from 13.10 because I've used 13.10 in derivative distros like Mint. But I've actually enjoyed my time here with Ubuntu, and I'm actually going to keep it on my system for a while. I think that it's come a long way since 11.04, and I think some of the things that the team are doing are actually really good. And I'm excited to see people taking their vision and trying to make it a reality, because I don't think there's a lot of people out there that do that sort of thing, and I'm happy to see when a company is doing it with Linux. So that's my take on Ubuntu 14.04. If you're an existing user and you're using 13.10, I do think this is worth the upgrade. Not a lot's going to change for you, except that you're going to get a longer support cycle, so it's going to be for 5 years. The Unity 7 interface that you've been used to is going to be the exact same. And of course, you're going to have newer packages and newer software available to you, so I definitely think you should upgrade. If you're a new Linux user, I think Ubuntu 14.04 would be a great place to start. It's very user-friendly. I think that it's out-of-the-box ready kind of model is what you would need as a new Linux user to get going. I think some of the other distros may be a little overwhelming unless you're extremely computer savvy or have used Linux in the past. I think Ubuntu is a great place to start and maybe the place that you stay. So that's my take on Ubuntu 14.04. As of right now, I'm actually going to give it 2 thumbs up. I think the team's done a lot of great things. One last thing I'll say, that if I had to customize the desktop in terms of looks, if I were to give it one big criticism, it's the aesthetic. I really wish the team would hire a decent graphic designer. I think the desktop is hideous. I'm sorry, but I think aesthetically it's terrible. I get knocked on this all the time when I start to talk about aesthetics of software, but anybody who knows anything about software development, it's not, and I think in Linux we always just focus on function. But there is an art to developing software, and that's not only function, but that's also the aesthetic appeal. That's why the graphic designers get paid a lot of money that work for these big companies, because they get charged with making their software beautiful. And for anybody who is a content creator, I think you can appreciate the things that I'm saying here. I think, again, in terms of every single operating system, they've tried to make it more. Look at Windows and how it's evolved. Everything doesn't look like Windows 98. Why is that? Why is OS 10 evolved and they're making it more aesthetically pleasing? Because that's just part of software development. It's not just function. If it was just function, everything would look like it was 50 years old, but it doesn't, because that also evolves. We have we've got these 4K displays that are coming out, which, by the way, Gnome 3.12 should be supporting. But we've got these beautiful displays, and why have ugly software? on your display. Why not, upgrade the visual as well as the function, because those two things work together. That whole picture speaks to good design. So I just think that Ubuntu is hideous, but since I've upgraded the GTK theme and the icons, I can at least now enjoy it some more. So hire a decent graphic designer, or get somebody who has an eye for the aesthetic that can tell you that it looks terrible and tell you what you need to do to fix it. But other than that, I think that it's been a solid release. I've enjoyed my time on it. I'm going to stick with it for a while. And that's my review on Ubuntu 14.04 Daily Build. Hope you enjoy, and we'll talk to you guys later.